Stop. What if the sign you trusted the most was the exact thing designed to mislead you? What if the moment you felt, "This is it, this is my direction, this is my confirmation," was actually the moment you slowly started walking away from what was truly meant for you? Because the truth is something no one tells you. Not every sign is sent to guide you forward. Some signs are allowed to appear in your life to test your awareness, to test your patience, to see whether you follow blindly or whether you pause and understand. And the dangerous part is those misleading signs never feel wrong in the beginning. They feel perfect. They feel aligned. They feel like everything you were waiting for has finally arrived, and that's exactly why you trust them without question, because they match your desire, they match your expectation, they mirror the exact future you've been imagining in your mind, and in that moment you don't realize you're not following truth, you're following something that simply feels like truth, and there is a difference, a massive difference, because truth doesn't need to rush you. Truth doesn't create confusion again and again. Truth doesn't force you to ignore your inner discomfort just to keep believing in it. But when a sign is misleading you, it slowly pulls you into a loop where you keep justifying things that don't feel right, a loop where you keep telling yourself, maybe this is part of the process, even when everything inside you feels heavy, uncertain, and unclear. And this is how people drift away from their real path, not in one big obvious mistake, but in a series of small unquestioned decisions, moments where they choose emotion over awareness, where they choose urgency over clarity, where they choose to believe instead of understand, because believing feels easier than questioning, and questioning feels uncomfortable. It forces you to step back. It forces you to admit that maybe, just maybe, you were wrong about something you were so sure about, and that realization is not easy, because when you trust a sign, you attach meaning to it. You build expectations around it, you start seeing your future through it. And letting go of that feels like losing something important, even if that thing was never truly meant for you in the first place. And that's why many people continue on the wrong path even when they start noticing the signs don't feel right anymore, because they've already invested emotionally, they've already convinced themselves that this must be the way, and turning back feels like failure. But what if turning back is actually the smartest move you can make? What if recognizing that something is not right is not a loss but a redirection? Because the longer you stay on a path that is not aligned with your truth, the further you move away from what actually is, and the harder it becomes to come back. And this is where awareness becomes your greatest power, because awareness allows you to see beyond the surface, it allows you to question without fear, it allows you to separate what feels good from what is actually good for you. And that distinction changes everything. Because not everything that feels right is meant for you. Sometimes it's just familiar, sometimes it's just comfortable, sometimes it's just aligned with your current mindset, not your higher direction. And that's why growth often feels uncomfortable, because it requires you to move beyond what feels easy, beyond what feels instantly satisfying, and towards something that may not give you immediate confirmation but gives you long-term clarity. And clarity is quiet, it doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't pressure you into quick decisions, it gives you space, it allows you to think, to reflect, to observe without emotional noise. And that's how you know the difference between a real sign and a misleading one. Because misleading signs come with urgency. They push you to act fast, to not overthink, to follow the feeling before it disappears. while real direction allows you to slow down, to understand, to align without pressure. And if you look back at moments where you felt confused, where you felt like something wasn't adding up but you still kept going, you'll notice a pattern of ignoring your inner voice in favor of something that looked better on the outside, something that felt more exciting, more promising, more immediate. And that's the trap. Because excitement is not always alignment, intensity is not always truth, and just because something gives you a strong feeling doesn't mean it's leading you in the right direction. Sometimes it's just testing how easily you can be influenced by your own emotions, and that's why self-awareness is more important than any external sign, because if you don't understand yourself, your patterns, your desires, your fears, you can be led anywhere, by anything that feels convincing enough in the moment. And this is not about becoming doubtful of everything. It's about becoming conscious. It's about developing the ability to pause before you follow, to question before you commit, to observe before you decide, because when you do that, you don't fall into illusions easily, you don't get pulled away by things that only look right on the surface, you start seeing deeper. You start recognizing the difference between something that aligns with your truth and something that only aligns with your desire. And that awareness protects you, it keeps you grounded. It keeps you from drifting too far in the wrong direction, and even if you realize that you've been following something that wasn't meant for you, that realization itself is powerful, because it brings you back. It reconnects you with your sense of direction, it reminds you that you are not stuck, you are just momentarily off path, and being off path is not the end, it's just a phase that teaches you something you couldn't have learned otherwise, because sometimes the only way to understand the difference between illusion and truth is to experience both, and once you do, once you see clearly, you don't make the same mistake again, you don't follow blindly, you don't chase every sign that appears in front of you, you become selective, intentional, aware, and that's when your path starts to align naturally, not because you are searching for signs, but because you are aligned within yourself, and when you are aligned within, you don't need constant confirmation from the outside. You don't need every step to feel perfect, you trust your understanding, your awareness, your ability to recognize what is right for you, and that's a different kind of confidence, a deeper one that doesn't get shaken easily, one that doesn't depend on external validation, and maybe that's the real lesson behind all of this. Maybe the sign you trusted wasn't there to guide you forward, maybe it was there to wake you up. To make you realize that blindly following anything, no matter how right it feels, can lead you away from your truth, and that the real direction you're seeking doesn't come from outside signals, it comes from within, from your ability to stay aware, to stay grounded, to choose consciously instead of reacting emotionally, and when you reach that level of understanding, everything changes. Because now even if a misleading sign appears again, you won't follow it blindly, you'll pause, you'll question, you'll observe, and in that moment of awareness, you'll choose differently, and that single choice can change your entire direction. It can bring you back to a path that is real, meaningful, aligned with who you truly are, and not just what you momentarily desire. And that is where your real journey begins, not when everything feels perfect, not when every sign confirms your expectations, but when you develop the clarity to see beyond illusions and the strength to choose truth over comfort. Because in the end, it's not about the signs you see, it's about how consciously you respond to them, and that response determines whether you move closer to your purpose or slowly drift away from it without even realizing it. and the moment you start realizing that not every sign was meant to guide you. Something inside you begins to shift, because now you're no longer just reacting to what appears in front of you, you're observing it, questioning it, understanding it at a deeper level, and that changes everything about the way you move through your life, because before this awareness, every coincidence felt like confirmation, every repeated pattern felt like destiny, every strong emotion felt like truth. But now you begin to see how easily the mind can connect dots that were never meant to be connected, how quickly desire can turn randomness into meaning, and how dangerously convincing that meaning can feel when you want something badly enough. And this is where most people get trapped without even knowing it, because they are not being misled by the world, they are being misled by their own interpretation of it, by the way they filter every experience through what they hope is true instead of what actually is. And this is not something that makes you weak, it makes you human. Because the mind is designed to look for patterns, to create order out of chaos, to find significance in moments that feel emotionally charged, but the problem begins when you stop questioning those patterns, when you start accepting every emotional signal as a directional sign, because emotion is powerful, but it is not always accurate, it can amplify illusions just as easily as it can highlight truth. And that's why awareness is the key, because awareness gives you distance, it gives you the ability to step outside your immediate reaction and look at things from a clearer perspective, and when you do that, you start noticing something you didn't see before, you start noticing how misleading signs often come with a sense of urgency, a pressure to act quickly, a feeling that if you don't follow this now, you might miss your chance forever, and that pressure creates anxiety, it creates a fear of missing out. And in that state, you are not thinking clearly, you are reacting emotionally. And emotional reactions are easy to influence, easy to manipulate, even by your own thoughts, and this is why so many people end up chasing things that were never meant for them, because they felt like they had to act immediately, they felt like this was their moment, their opportunity, their sign, without realizing that real opportunities don't disappear just because you took a moment to think. Real alignment doesn't punish you for being aware, it doesn't vanish the second you slow down, in fact, it becomes clearer the more you observe it, the more you understand it, the more you allow yourself to process it without pressure. And this is one of the biggest differences between something that is meant for you and something that is not. Because what is meant for you will not require you to abandon your clarity just to keep it, it will not force you into a state of confusion where you constantly have to convince yourself that this is right, it will feel stable, even when it is challenging, it will feel grounded, even when it pushes you to grow, and growth can be uncomfortable, but it is a different kind of discomfort. It is a discomfort that expands you, not one that drains you, and learning to recognize that difference is one of the most important skills you can develop, because it protects you from wasting your time, your energy, your focus on things that only look right on the surface but are not aligned with your deeper path, and once you start seeing this clearly, you begin to understand that being led away is not always about something external pulling you off track, sometimes it is about internal misalignment, about following something that matches your current state instead of your higher direction, because if you are feeling uncertain, you may be drawn to things that give you temporary certainty. If you are feeling lonely, you may interpret attention as connection. If you are feeling stuck, you may see any movement as progress, even if it is in the wrong direction, and this is why self-awareness is everything, because it allows you to see not just what is happening around you, but what is happening within you. It allows you to understand why certain things feel right to you at certain moments, and whether that feeling is coming from truth or from a temporary emotional state. And when you reach that level of understanding, you stop being easily influenced by external signs, you stop chasing every signal that appears in your path, you become more selective, more intentional, more grounded in your decisions, and that changes the entire direction of your life, because now you are not moving based on impulse. You are moving based on clarity, and clarity is powerful. It simplifies things, it removes unnecessary confusion, it allows you to see what is actually important and what is just noise, and once you can distinguish between those two, you stop wasting energy on distractions, you stop investing in things that don't align with your true path, and that creates space for something real to enter your life, something that doesn't need to prove itself through constant signs, something that doesn't rely on emotional highs to keep you interested, something that feels steady, consistent, and real. And at first, that might not feel as exciting as the intense, emotional experiences you are used to, because your mind has been conditioned to associate intensity with importance, but over time, you begin to appreciate the difference, you begin to understand that real alignment is not about constant excitement, it is about inner peace, about a sense of knowing that doesn't need constant validation. And that is where true confidence comes from, not from external signs, not from repeated confirmations, but from your own ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously. And once you develop that, you become difficult to mislead, because you are no longer looking for something outside of you to tell you what to do, you are connected to your own sense of direction, your own understanding, your own awareness, and that is something no misleading sign can override, because even if something looks perfect on the surface, even if it feels right in the moment, you will pause. You will observe, you will question, and in that pause, you will find your answer, not in the sign itself, but in your response to it, and that is where your power lies, not in the signs you see, but in how you interpret them, how you respond to them, how consciously you choose your direction, because in the end, it is not the sign that determines your path, it is your awareness of it, and when that awareness is strong, clear, and grounded, nothing can easily lead you away from what is truly meant for you, no matter how convincing it may appear in the moment. But from your own ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously, and once you develop that, you become difficult to mislead, because you are no longer looking for something outside of you to tell you what to do, you are connected to your own sense of direction, your own understanding, your own awareness. And that is something no misleading sign can override, because even if something looks perfect on the surface, even if it feels right in the moment, you will pause, you will observe, you will question, and in that pause, you will find your answer, not in the sign itself, but in your response to it, and that is where your power lies, not in the signs you see, but in how you interpret them, how you respond to them, how consciously you choose your direction, because in the end, it is not the sign that determines your path, it is your awareness of it, and when that awareness is strong, clear, and grounded, nothing can easily lead you away from what is truly meant for you, no matter how convincing it may appear in the moment. But from your own ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously, and once you develop that, you become difficult to mislead, because you are no longer looking for something outside of you to tell you what to do, you are connected to your own sense of direction, your own understanding, your own awareness, and that is something no misleading sign can override, because even if something looks perfect on the surface, even if it feels right in the moment, you will pause, you will observe, you will question, and in that pause, you will find your answer, not in the sign itself, but in your response to it, and that is where your power lies, not in the signs you see, but in how you interpret them, how you respond to them, how consciously you choose your direction. Because in the end, it is not the sign that determines your path. It is your awareness of it, and when that awareness is strong, clear, and grounded, nothing can easily lead you away from what is truly meant for you, no matter how convincing it may appear in the moment. But from your own ability to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to choose consciously, and once you develop that, you become difficult to mislead. Because you are no longer looking for something outside of you to tell you what to do, you are connected to your own sense of direction, your own understanding, your own awareness, and that is something no misleading sign can override, because even if something looks perfect on the surface, even if it feels right in the moment, you will pause, you will observe, you will question, and in that pause, you will find your answer, not in the sign itself, but in your response to it, and that is where your power lies, not in the signs you see, but in how you interpret them, how you respond to them, how consciously you choose your direction, because in the end, it is not the sign that determines your path, it is your awareness of it, and when that awareness is strong, clear, and grounded, nothing can easily lead you away from what is truly meant for you, no matter how convincing it may appear in the moment. And when you reach that point where your awareness becomes stronger than your impulses, you start to notice something even deeper, something that most people never fully understand. And that is the fact that being misled was never just about the sign itself, it was about what that sign revealed within you, because every misleading direction exposes a hidden pattern, a quiet tendency, a part of you that was still seeking something outside instead of standing firmly within, and once you begin to see that, you stop blaming the sign, you stop blaming the situation, and you start looking inward with honesty, not with judgment, but with clarity. Because you realize that the sign only had power because something inside you was ready to believe it, ready to follow it, ready to attach meaning to it without fully understanding it, and that realization is not meant to make you feel guilty, it is meant to make you aware, because awareness gives you control, it gives you the ability to change the way you respond moving forward, and that is where real transformation begins, not when the world changes, but when your perception changes, because perception shapes everything. It determines how you interpret situations, how you assign meaning, how you decide what is important and what is not, and when your perception is driven by unconscious patterns, you can easily misread reality, you can mistake distraction for direction, you can confuse emotional intensity with genuine alignment, and this is why so many people find themselves repeating the same cycles, following similar paths, encountering similar outcomes. Because they are not actually seeing things differently, they are just experiencing the same patterns in different forms, and breaking that cycle requires something deeper than just avoiding certain signs. It requires you to understand the root of why those signs affected you in the first place. It requires you to recognize the part of you that was searching, the part of you that was hoping, the part of you that was willing to accept something without fully questioning it, and once you understand that, you begin to outgrow it, not forcefully, But naturally, because awareness dissolves illusions, it removes the need to chase what once felt important. It shifts your focus from external validation to internal clarity, and that shift changes everything about how you move forward, because now you are not looking for signs to tell you what to do, you are looking for alignment within yourself, and alignment is not loud, it is not dramatic, it does not come with constant emotional highs, it is steady, it is consistent. It is quiet but certain, and at first, that quiet certainty might feel unfamiliar. Because you have been conditioned to expect intensity, to expect something that feels overwhelming, something that feels like a clear signal, but real direction often feels simple, almost too simple, because it does not try to convince you, it does not try to prove itself, it just is, and that simplicity can be confusing if you are used to complexity, if you are used to overanalyzing, if you are used to searching for deeper meanings in everything. But once you allow yourself to trust that simplicity, once you allow yourself to move without needing constant confirmation, you begin to experience a different kind of clarity, one that is not dependent on external factors, one that remains stable even when circumstances change, and that is when you truly understand what it means to be aligned, because alignment is not about everything going perfectly, it is about you remaining clear regardless of what is happening around you. It is about you not losing yourself in the process, not getting pulled into confusion, not being easily influenced by things that only appear significant on the surface, and when you reach that state, you become grounded in a way that protects you from being led away again, because now even if something tempting appears, even if something looks like a perfect sign, you will not rush toward it, you will not attach meaning to it immediately, you will give yourself space. You will observe. You will allow the truth to reveal itself naturally instead of forcing an interpretation, and that patience is powerful, because it prevents you from making decisions based on temporary emotions, it allows you to respond from a place of clarity instead of impulse, and over time, this way of moving becomes natural, it becomes your default state. And that is when your life starts to feel different, not because everything around you has changed, but because you have changed the way you interact with it. You have changed the way you see it, you have changed the way you respond to it, and that internal shift creates external results. It leads you toward experiences that are actually aligned with your path, not because you chased them, but because you were ready for them. Because you were clear enough to recognize them without confusion, and that is something you cannot force, it is something you develop, something you grow into, something that becomes stronger every time you choose awareness over impulse. Every time you choose clarity over comfort, every time you choose to pause instead of react, and those small choices add up. They create a foundation of understanding that cannot be easily shaken, a sense of direction that does not rely on constant external confirmation, and that is what gives you true confidence, not the belief that every sign you see is guiding you correctly, but the understanding that even if something tries to mislead you, you have the awareness to recognize it, the patience to question it, and the strength to walk away from it if it does not align with your truth, and that is where your power lies, not in avoiding every possible distraction, but in developing the ability to see through them, to understand them, to not be controlled by them, and when you reach that level, you no longer fear being misled, because you know that even if you take a wrong turn, you will recognize it, you will correct it, you will learn from it. And you will continue moving forward with even greater clarity, and that removes the fear that once made you follow. things blindly, because now you trust yourself more than you trust any external sign. You trust your awareness, your understanding, your ability to navigate uncertainty without losing your direction, and that trust is what keeps you aligned, it is what keeps you grounded, it is what ensures that no matter what appears in front of you, no matter how convincing it may seem, you will not lose yourself in it. You will not drift away without realizing it, because you are present, you are conscious. You are aware, and in that state, your path becomes something you actively create, not something you passively follow, and that is the difference between living in confusion and living in clarity, between being led by illusions and being guided by understanding, between chasing signs and becoming someone who no longer needs them to find their way, because now the direction is not something you are searching for outside. It is something you carry within you, something that remains steady. Something that remains true, something that no misleading sign can take away from you once you have truly found it.